Welcome in, everybody. I am Ben Parker. Tonight, I'm joined by Simon Short. We have all kinds of people here on this network, Pro Football Enterprises, but we really are continuing the theme of hot seat coaches, Coach Carousel, NFL Coach Carousel. Black Monday happened. We did a show that night, and big things have happened since then. So that's really kind of what we're doing here is clean up on aisle six here, okay? We are trying to pick up the last vestiges, if you will, of the firings that continue to happen here. So, Simon, how you doing tonight, man?
I'm great, man. I'm fired up coming off of a excellent podcast with you and Josh over on the Simon and Friends podcast, previewing the NFL playoffs, and then I can psychologically get in your brain and Jedi mind trick you into doing this video as well. So super pumped, having a great night. Happy to be here.
Because everybody can already see my Excel toolbars here, because this is where I wanted to set up this screen, and I just did not put it over on the PowerPoint. You can see gliding across your screen here, all in its beauty and glory, the Box Score Network. Okay, we and Pro Football Enterprise, the sister networks. It's a lot of the same people, often different content, but a lot of the same people. So check that out. We did just do that hot, fresh playoff look there. Really fun, entertaining there with Josh Lemons as well. So for those of you in the audience, you're like, what the heck is this board? Where did it come from? This is something we did 5 weeks ago where we put a bunch of guys over on the safe side. All 20 of them so far, fingers crossed for them, are safe. We put some guys in the middle. Two of them are out with Stefanski and
Mhm.
Carroll. And then we got these guys over here on the left. Now, I say that the 20 guys that are safe, one of them we're going to lead off with parted ways, if you will, fired, however
Right.
you want to describe it. So, anyway, he's out. Let's lead off with that, okay? John Harbaugh out for the Ravens. It happened after we did our show Monday night. So, Simon, take that any direction you want, whether you want to defend Harbaugh, attack Harbaugh, just lay it out better. You take a run at it, then we'll talk about John Harbaugh here.
Yeah, John Harbaugh, obviously the second longest tenured head coach in the NFL at that point, with the Ravens for 18 seasons, being fired after the 8 and 9 season this year, marred by injuries. You talk about that defense got decimated. Lamar technically only missed a handful of games, but he was dealing with leg injuries all season long, clearly affected his play. Um, I didn't expect this, but also with it happening, like it's kind of like a I don't want to say under, no, I'm not with it. I would have kept Harbaugh for another season. I guess it wasn't what I expected. I'm not surprised based on the way, yeah, sports are played now and cycles happen now. But also, it's not what I would have done. I said in that show 5 weeks ago, I just chalked this up to a wash. Everybody got hurt. Look, in the middle of the board there, Zach Taylor gets to keep his job every year when everybody gets hurt. For the Ravens, everyone gets hurt one year, and now 18 years are erased for Harbaugh. But 2 weeks ago, that report, that news piece came out in the Baltimore Sun newspaper about behind the scenes. There's a lot of stuff. There's actually this like Lamar Harbaugh potential disconnect. We had reporting from Ian Rappaport over the course of the day here on Wednesday when the news broke that he lost the locker room. Schefter came back and said, "Oh, he didn't lose the locker room. Guys were crying in his office about him leaving." Namely, Schefter mentioned Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews, and Isaiah Likely, not one Lamar Jackson, which is an interesting guy to leave out there. Um, but listen, credit to Shane because Shane was on here 5 weeks ago and said Harbaugh should maybe in the maybe category because it was such a weird up and down season. And you can say injuries like I say, but then maybe a Packers fan would say, look at LaFleur, man. Every year, guys get hurt. The quarterback misses 2 to 3 games every year, and they win those games. Not only do they stay afloat, they win those games. So why can't Harbaugh, with all this institutional built-in success, survive one year and still get 10 wins and give his team a chance to get into the playoffs? So there's both ends of it. Ultimately, it's not what I would have done. I would have relied on the fact that, hey, this team won 12 games, 13 games the last 2 seasons. Harbaugh moved on from longtime OC Greg Roman to bring in Todd Monken, a new voice to fix the offense when it needed it. Um, he has continuously found good defensive coordinators. So even if Zach Orr didn't work this year, I would have had confidence in him to do it again. And I would have just chalked this up to kind of a weird year. But I know a lot of people have said, hey, before Lamar started, the Ravens missed the playoffs 3 years in a row from 2015 through 2017, right? They didn't have a playoff win for 4 or 5 years there until Lamar was the quarterback in between 2018 and 2019. Um, so it's not that everything has been rosy for Harbaugh his entire tenure with Baltimore, but I am still surprised that it did take place considering all the injuries this season.
Yeah, emotionally, it didn't bother me that he was gone, but I'm with you. I wouldn't have done it. It's hard to find good coaches in this league, and it's especially hard to find a coach better than a guy who's won a
Oh yeah.
Super Bowl and been to the playoffs a billion times and had a whole bunch of double-digit win seasons, especially over the past, what, he had double-digit wins 3 of the last 4 years, and I think if I'm reading it right, 6 of the last 8. I mean, and I'm not talking about barely over. I'm, 12, 13, 14 wins in some of these seasons. These are teams,
Yep.
and I get, if you want to solely make the argument that he's not capitalizing on those playoff appearances, I'm with you. That's a reason right there. That's enough. If there is Lamar discontent butting heads there, that's enough. I'm
Hmm.
okay. I understand. That's okay. Yeah, star quarterback, limited time span. I'm with you on that. If you want to harken back to pre-Lamar like you did, because you're right, man. You look in the middle of Harbaugh's career there, with the Ravens. There's an 8-8. There's a 5-11, 8-8, 9-7, all in the middle of two 10-win seasons. So you got that 6-year run right there where not a whole lot going on after that defensive dominance that they had with the Hall of Famers with Reed and Lewis. So three different tenures here, basically all rolled into one here. I wouldn't have let him go. I would have. I didn't see anything this year that made me think this was the year to let him go. I just didn't see that. So this wouldn't have been the year. But I will say, a lot of times when you're inside the building, you can feel it coming. So maybe if the Lamar discontent had been brewing for a year or two, and maybe if they were tired of being this good and not getting closer to a Super Bowl, if those two things brought on the feeling that, hey, this was coming down the pipe, I get it. I understand it. But still, man, I'm just not sure this was the year to do that. I think I would have let it go on another year.
And Diana Rossini had this note that I think maybe was the most key note of all with this. She said, I'll just quote this quote, a key pressure point in the John Harbaugh dismissal, according to those familiar with today's discussions, was his, so being between Harbaugh and the Ravens, was his refusal to entertain any conversations about potentially moving on from offensive coordinator Todd Monken. So I think Harbaugh was kind of my mind, not that some great football philosopher here, where hey, everything was just everybody got hurt. Let's run this thing back entirely next season, and maybe Eric DaCosta or maybe even ownership was like, we had such a weird year, and the offense has had such weird moments over the last couple of years. We have to do something, right? We can't, and I don't, it doesn't mention Zach Orr, the defensive coordinator, certainly had his struggles this season and last year ups and downs as well. So like, don't know if that was on the table or not, but it seems like Harbaugh wanted to keep his whole staff. So I think it was maybe it just comes down to that, where it wasn't a like, hey, us versus Harbaugh or even Lamar versus Harbaugh, but like you're not willing to make any changes. And listen, he's a Harbaugh. He could be stubborn. He could be steadfast in what he wants to do, right? He's not gonna be a pushover or do something he doesn't want to do. So maybe it became an ultimatum of like, we either need to make some sort of coordinator change or we need to make a whole staff change sort of deal. And maybe that's ultimately what it came down to for Baltimore and everybody involved.
Yeah, and that's all fair enough. And to me, this feels very different than what's going on in Tennessee the past 2 or 3 seasons, where you
Oh yeah.
have them kicking Vrabel out
Yes. Hmm.
after a whole mess of a power struggle with the GM, and then you don't even give Callahan, who I wasn't a huge fan of, you don't even give him long enough to
Hmm.
get his feet wet. Really
Yep.
feels like chaos over there. This doesn't feel like chaos. It, we are humans. This is human activity here. Sometimes you just feel, rightly or wrongly, you feel like this has run its course. It's time for whatever reason, it's just time for things to change. I'm okay with that. Again, I wouldn't have done it, not this year. But I do understand. I am okay with it. Real quick here, I didn't prep you for this. What are the odds? I want two percentages here. One, based on do you think Harbaugh would go right into a coaching job immediately if you were him? Like, do you think he will want to do it? And then if not immediately, then do you think then he is destined to jump right back into coaching at some point instead of sitting at a desk for the next 20 years?
It's 100% that he's going to be coaching somewhere next season
Yep.
in the
Okay.
NFL. He wants to, he's itching to. I think I saw reported that like 9 teams reached out to him to gauge
Yes.
interest. That's more
Yes.
teams than have fired their head coaches right now.
Yes,
So
it
that
is.
includes some teams with head coaches. So like looking at our board here again, a popular name that's been reported is the Dolphins, right? Who we were all
Right.
kind of like, is McDaniel going to be safe or not? And he even said, I think yesterday, like I'm going to be in the meetings with potential GMs, and then he wasn't in the meetings with potential GMs, and they've
Mm.
been linked to Harbaugh and are apparently interested in Harbaugh, and so like, are we waiting to see what happens there? Harbaugh is not taking any interviews this week, so it's Wednesday. This is on the 7th. He's not taking any interviews this week because is there a team in the playoffs that's waiting to see if they win their game or not? Right. So some names there in the middle: McDermott with the Bills, Sirianni with the Eagles. Could one of those teams? I don't want to say it, but Tomlin with the Steelers. Not that I think the Steelers are calling anybody about time behind their back, but the continued communication about Tomlin has more been he might just choose to step away, regardless of what we actually think about that. That's not what we're here to talk about tonight.
Right.
Is that something the Steelers are like mentally prepared? Maybe Tomlin has told them, "Hey, I'm thinking about stepping down," so they're calling Harbaugh to see if he'd be interested. That sort of thing. Or is it one of these other teams? Like who did we have in safe? Like that might all of a sudden be like, oh, maybe we will call about Harbaugh. The Bucks, even though they just came out today and said Bowles was going to be safe.
Right.
Could Jerry
Yes.
Jones be cooking something up with Schottenheimer there? Um,
He loves his
I
big fish. Yeah.
I think that's probably just about it. Are the Chiefs wondering if Andy Reid might decide to retire kind of late in the process here? The Commanders, they fired
The
their coordinators
Commanders.
today, so could Dan
Yes.
Quinn be kind of on the hot seat if Harbaugh would want to go to Washington? Um, yeah, he will definitely be coaching somewhere in the NFL. Someone will want him, and he vaults up to like top two
Right.
candidates and probably top overall candidate this year. And to your point about this year for Baltimore, it makes it even stranger they would do it this year when this is not a particularly good
Yeah.
carousel. So people have been saying this all day. The fact that after this firing, the Ravens became the top destination for coaches and Harbaugh became the top candidate for
Yes.
teams needing coaches is a pretty funny situation to be in. I joked earlier today, I sent this to you, that the Browns and Ravens should just switch staffs. Like
Switch them. Yeah.
Baltimore and Cleveland have been, trading off for decades now at this point. Um, I would love to see Stefanski there with Lamar. I'm sure they want their defense to be better. They can have Jim Schwartz. And the Browns need like an adult in the room, some stability kind of thing. So get
Yes.
Harbaugh over there to Cleveland. And they want to help their offense that's been leaky. So get Tom Monken in there, jumpstart it. Let's switch those staffs and just call it a day.
Yeah, totally agree. The intrigue will continue. It's fascinating, and it's worth any conversation that's been going on today and until the new hirings get made. The Ravens organization and Harbaugh himself both deserve the conversations. They're that meritorious. My favorite line in there was that 9 or 10 teams had already called and inquired about Harbaugh coming to them, which is significantly more than there are openings in the NFL. And that's the way it should be because I've often joked about Tomlin over
Hmm.
the last 2 or 3 years that the
Oh
very
yeah.
second he is not a Steeler anymore is when roughly 15 to 20 NFL teams should immediately be calling him and asking him to come over there. I don't think quite as many on Harbaugh, but it still should be a double digit number all the teams you just mentioned. I'll even throw in the Saints. I have nothing against Kellen Moore, but if Harbaugh's available,
Yeah.
everybody from the Commanders to the Saints to the Cowboys to the Buccaneers, you mentioned all of that to these teams over here on the left that do have the openings and the
Hmm.
rockiness. They should all be calling and inquiring and engaging interest and maybe even pursuing aggressively. So yeah, totally agree. This is fascinating. So it's very exciting. Final thought here on Harbaugh before we kick over to something else.
I'm joking. Don't send him to Cleveland. I want him. I would. Well, actually, it would be fun to have him and Tomlin continue the rivalry. But I would like more incompetence in Cleveland to continue, please. That would be great. Thank you.
Oh my gosh. All right. So let's move on here. We're not going to cover everything that's happened, but we do want to hit some of the highlights. Cliff Kingsbury out as
Hmm.
Commanders OC. Now, I'm going to lay the table here just a little bit because me and Robertson covered the
Yep.
Commanders all
Yep. The
during the
weekly show.
year.
Hmm.
The defense was a disaster in every sense of the word. The offense was not, but you can point to things if you were wanting to seek performance-based issues that would suggest they might at least think about a replacement. But by and large, I was satisfied with both the production and the overall results from Kingsbury the past two seasons, especially considering how injury riddled Daniels was this year. So I wasn't looking for them to let go of him, and it kind of surprised me a little when the reports started coming out that that in fact was a very large possibility. Now, having said that, what's come out over the past 2 days is just an outpouring of a hot mess behind closed doors. There is all kinds of things going on, and I'm not even sure we've still got to the total root of it. But there are performance things you can point to. This largely seems to be much more Discord slash issue based behind closed doors, and I'll let you expound on that as much as you want to. But Cliff Kingsbury out as Commander's OC.
Yeah. It seems that because if it was weird. It was weird when the reports first came out about Cliff could not be retained as Washington's OC even if he doesn't get a head coaching job. I was like, well, why would that be? And then it was kind of like a him versus Dan Quinn thing in play style. And you're like, okay, well, defensive coordinator becoming a head coach versus college influenced OC quarterback guy. And that did come out today, right? Like it came down to like how the run versus pass splits, how quickly they wanted to play, the pace, the tempo, the way Kingsbury does all the no huddle stuff was like a big one, and that would all make a lot of sense just on its own, right? It's just
Right.
hey, it doesn't match stylistically, and last year they overlooked it because they were winning. This year they weren't, so they moved on. Silly, but we can see that thread and pull at it. But now it's all this stuff about management was getting too involved in what they wanted to see from a coaching perspective, who they wanted to be out there on the field. Um, the uh, the Ben Johnson tweet from his interview with Chicago 2 years ago recirculated about he felt they were basketball people and not real football people, and had an
Hmm.
overinflated sense of
Hmm.
what they knew about football. And like, oh man,
Yep.
that's aging quite well for Ben
It
Johnson.
is.
Um, so this feels a little bit um like Dan, whatever the messaging is being corrected for, like, oh, Dan Quinn and Cliff Kingsbury ultimately decided this wasn't going to work for them, when really it was management being like, why are we doing this? Why is Cliff doing this? We don't want Cliff doing. And you would know better. I don't know what that would be. I don't know what the front office was maybe trying to get out of Cliff that they didn't, or what Cliff was maybe doing that was out of character for him that the front office mandated. But yeah, it seems like there's a lot of weird stuff happening back there, and that's such a bummer when we were in such a good place with Washington. We just felt so good about what they were from an organization standpoint with their change last year, and it'd be a huge bummer now.
We did hear a few whispers back when the hirings were first taking place 2 years ago, right? About, maybe this is a little different, but by and large, these people, both the owner and the GM, the new GM, were so well respected in all the circles that, that could be dismissed as, hey, just personality conflicts, right?
Hmm.
We've really, by and large, heard nothing of that over the past 2 years because last year was so wonderful in every regard.
Yep.
And then this year, the defense was so overwhelmingly horrible that, you didn't notice anything else really. But now it's all coming out, and I'm not even totally sure we've gotten to the root of it. Like I said,
Yeah.
it it
Feels
it,
like
it
a
sounds
rumor.
like a hot mess, and for the first time, you're starting to think, does somebody upstairs truly know what they're doing in the football sense, and are they meddling too much? Because we really haven't noticed that the past 2 years. But if that's happening, I actually have a lot of respect for how Kingsbury seems to have matured as an OC at the NFL level, even though he doesn't do things the way I would do them. I mean, he doesn't. He
Hmm.
doesn't call plays or game flow anything the way I would do it. and yet the results have not been bad or catastrophic. I see production and results, so I'm fine with that. They knew what he was when they hired him,
Right.
So
Hmm.
that's, you hire a guy, you should. I've never liked management meddling too much because I've always wanted to be left alone and do my job. And I've had that happen to me a lot over the years. So I'm really more here. While I can understand you wanting to just let Kingsbury go for any number of reasons, I'm emotionally okay with that. I'm really not okay with management meddling a whole heck of a lot. You hire a guy, you let him do the job. The more you interfere, the worse that guy's performance is going to be by and large, especially in NFL circles. So that's about where I am on that. I'm not emotionally attached to Kingsbury. They'll be fine. Other people will want to come. Maybe not everybody they want will come, but somebody will want to come who will be able to get some production out. But it doesn't sound good from coming up upstairs. And I don't know who to blame there, if that's owner or general manager, but I'm not liking the vibes here the past couple of days.
Yeah, and the for Cliff and yeah, yeah, I don't know. But in terms of being a desirable place for an OC to come, this would be interesting because this will be one of the few places, it doesn't look like there's going to be many play calling offensive coordinator jobs coming up, right? It looks like it's going to be a lot of OCs leaving to be head coaches to go get play calling duties as a head coach or do something. So if you're an OC
Yeah.
and maybe you're a non-play calling OC or you're someone that wants to call plays and be an OC, like this will you're like, I got Jaden Daniels. Oh, that was like Jaden Daniels. Like, how's he? He doesn't seem like he's going to be very happy about this. He had a great relationship. So, like, for management and as an organization that we thought turned the corner to now in year three, after your quarterback was awesome as a rookie, injured all of his second year, are you alienating him a little bit now by moving on from his coordinator that he had a good relationship? Just doesn't feel like something a button up organization would do right now.
No, it doesn't. And I'll just say real quick because me and Robertson covered several names last night over on this same network. Brian Dable's a guy who I respect and would have been interested in coming to Washington as the play caller, but as we've
Hmm.
continued 24 hours later to find out that if it can be trusted, Jaden Daniels wasn't in favor of this move.
Yeah.
I can tell you right now, if Brian Dable handles Jaden Daniels the way he was handling Daniel Jones the past year or two, that's not going to go well. That's
No.
going to go really bad. So
No. Mm.
maybe I don't want that. I also don't necessarily want a guy who's doing it all for the first time because if Dan Quinn doesn't get it together next year, everybody's out. I mean, they're kicking
Right.
everybody out. So you kind of want an experienced guy, but also somebody who's got a somewhat gentle hand, gentle but
Hmm.
firm hand. You don't want somebody who's going to go in and face-to-face conflict, Jaden Daniels. So, but stay tuned, right?
Yep. Quick names to highlight. I don't know if this was ones that you guys had. Thomas Brown, pass game coordinator with the Patriots right now. We've seen him in a lot of different roles over the years, so that would be one that would be interesting. And then Davis Webb, the Broncos quarterback coach, who was just an NFL quarterback like a few seasons ago. He's a
Yeah.
young guy, really keen on like quarterback development and relationships. So those are two names that are being talked about right now that I think might be interesting. Neither of those guys are calling plays at this point in their current job, so it'd be interesting for them to get a chance to call plays, work with a young quarterback, and develop that relationship.
Yeah, so stay tuned. We'll see what happens there in Washington. There's several things that happened since that were not surprises, so I'm not going to touch on those from a coordinator standpoint. The one that I shouldn't say it's a surprise, but it mildly surprised me is Matt Eberflus out as the Cowboys defensive coordinator. Now, while I wouldn't want Matt as my head coach at all, I've seen enough of that. I do want him as my defensive coordinator, and yet here he is getting kicked out of Dallas. Now, I didn't carefully watch the Dallas defense to, analyze their play calling and positioning and scheme this year, but I do understand that they let go of a pretty good player in Micah Parsons right at the start of the season, which would
Right.
change everything that you would be expected to do this year. And I know they added, two good defensive tackles, but those are add-ons. It's still changing everything.
Hmm.
And I wasn't a huge believer, and I don't think anybody was, in the Cowboys' defensive personnel anyway. I think it needs some infusion in certain
Yeah.
spots. So, where are you at? I know you respect Eberflus probably even more than I do, and I've got a whole heck of a lot for it on the DC front. Where are you at on this specific move?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely necessary. But it was something that I think was doomed from the start, both for the roster, the franchise, and for Eberflus. It's funny because he's the right coach for the defense that Dan Quinn was coaching, right? Lighter bodies, lighter boxes, fast, speed, react, hit, that sort of stuff. Um, After Dan Quinn leaves, they want to get a little tougher, a little bigger, a little meaner, right? He kind of actually did the Kingsbury thing where it was like, we might move on from Dan Quinn even if he doesn't get a head coaching job. And they bring in Mike Zimmer, completely the opposite, right? Like mean, gritty, nasty, like big bodies fight you. Except they still were using all of the Dan Quinn bodies, so that was never gonna fit,
Yeah.
right? That was never gonna work. They were gonna ask, you know, 280-pound defensive tackles to play like they were 315. So then they go to Eberflus this year. But the only problem is the Dan Quinn personnel was all still there and they were all 3 years older. So now you're asking them to be light, fast, run around and do stuff, and they're all getting hurt, and Micah Parsons isn't there. So like that didn't make sense either. So they haven't, since Dan Quinn left, they haven't been aligned with their defensive roster and their defensive scheme and their expectations and then what they needed them to do to the point that yeah, we're trading for Logan Wilson and we're getting Quinn Williams and ooh look, whoops, we released Trayvon Diggs and all this other stuff that's going on. So the I think Eberflus, if he gets somewhere, could be fine if it's the right roster and the right situation for everything. I don't know if I'd be running to hire him as a DC right now. We'll see what happens. Um, but I mean, maybe with some of those philosophies, maybe actually going to Washington with Dan Quinn if they want to do that, that would be interesting. But it's ultimately not a surprise, and I think it was kind of doomed from the start, even had Parsons been there, but especially once the trade happened.
It's easy to poke fun at Dallas, and a lot of us do for different reasons. And yet, I'm not really trying to do that. It feels like the vision has changed a little bit the past 2 or 3 seasons, not just because of head coaches moving over, but it also feels like I think there's different voices in the room, and I'm not even sure who the loudest one is. If it's Jerry, who's always going to be loud, or if he's actually listening to Steven, or if they've got that little secret guy over there that doesn't ever
Will
get to
McClay.
talk to anybody. So I don't know who the loudest voice in the room is, or if it changes every week, or if the loudest voice from 3 years ago is now not the loudest, and there's somebody else getting that vision influence. Because I almost sort of feel like, well, maybe Clay is getting that influence lately. And
Hmm.
again, with Jerry around, you're never going to completely get to implement any plan.
Right.
But maybe that voice is more, and I don't know, but it does feel like that would explain why you can't seem to get together on defensive coordinator scheme, mindset, vision with personnel. It's because they're changing. So I do appreciate what you said there about Eberflus scheme wise there and the personnel. So it does feel like from the front office standpoint, they know what they want to do on defense and trying to get there from player perspective. They just need a defensive coordinator who will match that. So, hopefully they get somebody in there to match that. Any more thoughts here on the Dallas defense for next year?
Uh, Jeff Ulrich was a match I made from the Falcons because he didn't have all the talent he needed there, but he just blitzed the crap out of everybody for the first 12 weeks of the season, I think, until the teams figured it out. So I don't know. Ulrich might be an interesting name there. Aiden Durd is the Seattle DC. He obviously doesn't call the plays, but he was with Dallas before he went to Seattle. So could he come back and be an influence? And then Jonathan Gannon just got fired from the Cardinals. Is he going to be a DC somewhere? We'll see.
Yeah, that's a great point. There are guys I would be interested in for Dallas. I do still feel like a persistent problem in Dallas is with Jerry there. I don't want to. It's to me, it's not dysfunctional like some other organizations, but it's always chaotic.
Hmm.
It's hard for one guy to come in and build everything
Yeah.
the way we saw it over in New England, the way we saw it in Kansas City. You talk about ownership meddling. I mean, it's just always going to happen. It's hard for one guy, even if he does get to do a lot of his plan, it's hard for one guy to really fully get that synergy going. I
Yep.
still feel like that's always going to be a problem in Dallas.
Yeah, when you're picking your perspective DC as you're trying to figure out who they're going to hire, it can't be someone that needs total control. A popular one was if Brian Flores doesn't get a head coaching job, people want Dallas because he's a free agent. His contract is up with Minnesota, so
Okay.
people want Dallas to just throw him a bunch of money. But Flores is going to want control of that thing, right? So is he going to listen to Jerry Jones when Jerry tells him to trade, to put in the fourth round edge rusher that Jerry liked and they threw him a bone on? I don't think so. So it's going to have to be someone that's like not quite as exciting, but you're just hoping a vibe situation, like a Brian Schottenheimer, like the way that worked out. You're just hoping the vibe kind of all mesh together the right way.
Yeah, fair enough. All right. So one of the things we've done this season, you've done an excellent job of it, is putting together a little mini coaching staff. So head coach, OC, DC. We don't have to do that in full tonight. Yeah, I don't know exactly what you've got stored in the old pocket here tonight, but give us another little taste because these things do change. We explore relationships. We explore like we just did with Dallas. Does this guy's scheme fit where we think our personnel should be heading? That
Hmm.
can be an issue. So give us a little taste here of another coaching staff or two or even three if you got it that either you haven't mentioned before or you just continue to really want to drill this down that this is worth teams going after taking a look at.
So obviously to update from Monday, because we said things like Flores, Dayball, and Graham with the Raiders. We said Joe Brady and Ryan Nielsen to the Cardinals as his DC. We said Jeff Hafley potentially to the Browns with his guy Vince Okabasi as the DC. I threw in Declan Doyle. I want Declan Doyle somewhere, so I actually put him in Cleveland. Do a little Kyle Shanahan-esque. Remember when he was in Cleveland for a year or two there as the OC? Obviously the big names though, like let's update Stefanski and Harbaugh. I joked earlier about they should swap, but Titans and Giants. Get your first round quarterback who is had his coach fired in his rookie season. Get him a guy that's going to be stable, right? So I put Stefanski with the Titans. Give Jim Schwartz, Jeffrey Simmons, and let them draft an edge rusher in the first round there, and that would be cool. And Giants, like John Harbaugh's ready for the Giants, man. He can take that, no problem. Keep Todd Monken with him. Denard Wilson can come from Tennessee to the Giants. He was with Harbaugh in Baltimore. Because remember, when Mike McDonald left Baltimore, he wasn't the only defensive coach that left. Denard Wilson left that staff, and Anthony Weaver left that staff to be the
Yeah.
DC. So huge brain drain there. So I'm sure Denard Wilson, who's done well in Tennessee, if he linked up with Harbaugh, that would be pretty cool. Um, Mike McCarthy's still a guy that's getting a ton of looks. So I stuck him in Atlanta, right? Potentially because they're gonna want a guy that's been there, done that. We talked about that on Monday. Al Harris is the defensive backs coach in Chicago right now. He was with McCarthy in Dallas. He's a really respected defensive coach. Um, you could give them any OC. The problem with that is though that what young hotshot up and coming guy on offense is going to want to go to McCarthy because McCarthy's going to want to call plays and design the offense. So you're probably not going to get a huge name there. Um, I'm still stamping for like Chris Shula, Mike LaFleur, and then Raheem Morris joining them. Could that be the Baltimore thing, right? Because here's the thing: right now, Baltimore, the betting favorite is Jesse Minter, right? The Chargers defensive coordinator. His name continues to get talked about. I mean, Jim Harbaugh just today had a press conference and they asked him about John. And in the same press conference, they were talking about Jesse Minter. And that connection's easy, right? Because it's like Minter spent time with the Harbaughs and it would be easy for, and like they're sad, they're upset, maybe a little hurt that Mike McDonald left and he's awesome now, right? He is the
Yeah.
first place Seahawks,
Yeah.
who's the young, super sharp defensive mind we can get out in front of. And Minter, it feels like my one blind spot for some reason. I don't know why. I'm just more drawn to Shula. I think it's just that history of the great head coaches that Shula has coached under. But Minter just seems like he's kind of like on his own. He is that sort of name, that sort of potential coach. So maybe he's the guy really that does kind of emerge as the other young guy. But I meant like I said, Joe Brady, I want to see somewhere get to call plays. So is he a guy that can be the coach for Baltimore, right? Come in and do a high powered offense for Lamar. And then some random assistant ones I threw out there that I haven't talked about. Cliff Kingsbury, if Joe Brady gets hired away, can he go to Buffalo? That might be interesting. Um, and then Davis Webb, I talked about. Maybe he goes to or not Denver, the Lions, right, to be their OC. Obviously that Sean Payton and Dan Campbell connection is there. And then yeah, I think that's just about it. So I don't have any like brand new staffs for you. My main thing right now is I want to get Stefanski and Harbaugh to the Titans and Giants just to give those guys some stability. Obviously, we went with the Raiders. to have some stability with whoever they take first overall. But I really don't want the Titans and Giants to 2 years from now be on their third head coach in this quarterback's rookie contract. So I really just want to get that stability there.
Some of these franchises just cannot seem to stop the revolving door, and I get it. So many of these owners come from the business world where not everybody can win, but most everybody can win. Just the economy goes good. You can make a bunch of money. A lot of people can make a bunch of money. When you get to the NFL, not everybody can win.
Hmm.
Half going to win, half going to lose. And these owners, some of them think, "Hey, I succeeded in the business world. I got to succeed here." And I did it by firing people after a year or two. I demand results. Well, the NFL is a half lose league. So if you keep firing everybody every year or two or three and swapping out quarterbacks every year or two or three, you might get lucky and win the lottery, but you're probably not going to. You're just trading penny stocks is essentially what you're doing. So I do think that's a big problem. Now, I will say, I'm not big on retreads for NFL coaches, never have been. But when they've shown that they can do it, I'm real big on them. They rocket right to the top of my list.
Hmm.
So I was already beating the Brian Flores drum hard
Yep.
last year, this year. I won't stop, okay? And then you add Harbaugh, and I'm like, heck yeah, everybody should be calling and talking to him.
Yeah.
And then you add Stefanski, who maybe is a little less clear, but I still respect, and I think he's got the head coach goods. Boy, I think that right there is the three guys that everybody should be trying to get to come to their place. And then whatever unproven guy you feel good about. Because again, a lot of these guys, we just don't get it. We will never know if they can do it
Hmm.
or not till they get the chance. And some of them will get the chance. So, if you don't get one of those three guys that seem to have proven that they can do it to different degrees, then you go out and pick the guy you feel best about and give him that first chance. And I'm all for that. So anyway, that's the three names that I'm after here. Um, that's pretty much going to wrap us up for the night. We will come back at some point, probably in 3 or 4 weeks after most of the hirings have been done, and give you our opinions on that based on the work that we've done. We're not reaction based. We are planning based. We put a lot of work into this advance ahead of time, which is very different than a lot of the talking heads that you'll hear. So we're not trying necessarily to get first word in, first word out, hot take. We plan for this every year. So we will be back. If something bigger breaks before then, like in another firing, we may come back with another show. But if not, you will see us back here in about 3 or 4 weeks with another show. So, Simon, any final thoughts here as we head out the door?
The other two big names to watch, just Clint Kubiak is getting a bunch of interview requests. Anthony Weaver is getting a bunch of interview requests. So those, I think in those, what, maybe 10, 11 names we mentioned there, though, that's where your pool should officially come from. So be on the lookout for that. But thank you, Ben, for putting this together and throwing this back on. And thank you all so much for watching.
Yeah, everybody, thank you all. This is the Pro Football Enterprises channel. We are really tightly affiliated with the Box Score Network. We have prospects coming out basically every week, usually one or two a week on both networks. So check those out along with other things that come out as well. So have a great one, everybody. We'll see you. Goodbye.